If you've ever struggled to cut tall or narrow parts on the table saw, you really need a tall fence. It's much safer and far more accurate than using your standard fence. In this video, I'm going to show you a really simple way to add a tall fence that slips right over the one you already have. And once it's on there, I'll show you how to cut a miter gauge slot so you can cut thinner things like lap joints or even tenons safely and accurately. Let's get started. To make this project, you're going to need some plywood as well as some melamine. And my plywood here is about a 1/2 inch thick. It's about 24 inches long. You can make yours a little bit longer if you want. I didn't make this as long as my fence because I don't really think it needs to be that long. All the materials and tools used will be on the website, which will be in the description down below. Now, the width of your plywood should be the height of your fence plus about 1 3/4 inches. My fence is 2 3/4, so the widths are going to be about 4.5 inches. Now, the width of the second set of plywood pieces should be the width of your table saw fence plus about 3/8 of an inch. We are going to make some dados, so they just need to be a little bit wider than the width. The problem with plywood is that there's always going to have some kind of bend in it. And this, I've got my bends facing the center. So when I make this, it's going to pull it together tight. I've raised the blade so that it's 3/16 above the top of the surface. I'm going to set my fence away from the blade, the exact height of the fence to the blade. And now I can make a series of cuts with these, moving the fence each time until my plywood fits inside. You could always use a dado stack, but this to me is a lot easier than setting all that up. Now the next thing that I want to do is add a rabbet to both pieces so that my second piece will slide in and be flush to the top. Now that this has been cut, I put it all together and then I clamped a clamp down below against the fence to see how much play is on the top. There is a little bit of play on the top, and that's okay as long as it's not too wide. Otherwise, it's going to give us a problem when we go to square it up. But before we do that, we need to drill some holes that will allow us to attach the fence to the front. This has been designed so that a bolt will be able to fit through this channel to hold that fence on. We need to add 2 bolts to this, or possibly even a third one if you wanted to. And I think I'm going to space this so that it's a third the way in on either side. So one here and one here. I'll divide this by thirds by flipping this over. Because this is thirds and because this is 24 inches, I'll divide 1 more than 3, which is going to be 6 inches. So I'll go in 6 inches here. This would be the half, and then 18 would be my second mark. I'm going to go right in the middle of this, which is right about there. I'll flip this over and add a mark there as well as over here. Because these will string together, I'm just going to put them together like that and drill them out. And we'll drill these out at 1/4 inch. And finally, if you just happen to have a track on yours that will do a T-bolt like this, I'm going to cut a groove for this to fit into so I can add a knob on the other side. If you don't have a track like this, there's another way that we can keep the fence that we add on from sliding. And we'll go over that here in a little bit. Now I'll add my glue. What I'm going to do first is just clamp right along that second shelf to make sure that it's seated properly and my dado's closed up, but I don't want to leave it here. If you look here, you can see my shelf. I want to go below it. I want to actually be clamping the fence. Now I'm going to take off each one of these, or at least move some of these, so that I am just hitting the fence. Take that one off, that, and then I'm going to move this one down so that it's touching the fence. Now I'm going to use a machinist square and make sure that I am flush all the way down. It has to be flush on both sides. If it's not flush, that's when you can come up to the top and really squeeze down, or even open it up a little bit to make sure that it's where it needs to be. And so far I am looking flush. This is obviously important because we want to make sure that when we cut something that this fence is going to be at a 90. Now we'll give this a chance to dry and we'll come back. With this now dry, we'll slide it on and see what we've got. And that's not going anywhere. And now we can add the fence to the front. This is just melamine. It's 4 feet long and 12 inches wide. I'll place it on there like that. I'll add 2 brad point bits inside the holes that I created earlier, and I can leave some marks to let myself know where I'm gonna drill. Now I have to be really careful about how far in I drill. I don't want to drill all the way through the back side. I just want the tip to just barely poke out. Now we can add this to the fence. To fasten this, we could use one of these expensive knurled thumb knobs. That would work just fine, but they are expensive and you might not be able to get one in the size that you're looking for. So we're gonna make a bittner nut with a 1/2 inch nut and a 1/4 inch nut. And all we're gonna do is place one inside of the other one and clamp it down. And that's it right there. It just gives you a little bit more torque when you twist the nut. Now keep in mind that when you have this attached, you want to make sure that you find the center balance on your fence when you move it. And then when you get it in place, do a couple clicks, which will help to straighten out the fence. Now I'm going to attempt to make a cut that I would never make with my old fence, and we'll see how it does. Because this is square to my fence, I know that I've got a good cut, but let's check it. This is the new cut face that I just made. I'll put this on my square, and it looks pretty good. If you don't happen to have a fence that you can add a bolt to like I have with mine, there's still another option that you have. First of all, you'll want to make sure that the fence is tight, which it should be if you follow this. And then you'll want to get a clamp like this that will fit on the end. So let me move this back. Back of my fence, this slides over like this, and then you can clamp it down. Now, I think that this came with a grinder, like a meat grinder of some kind to put on your bench. I've had it in my garage for a long time, but I did some research and found that you can get some desktop ones that will clamp to your desk, and it's actually a little bit bigger than this. I'll leave that in the description and on the website so that you can get that if you really need to. Again, this does need to be pretty tight. All we're doing is keeping this from moving backwards, which is the only force that you should have as you use this. Now, if you were thinking that, yeah, this works really well when it's wider, but it won't work as well if it's shorter like this piece, we're gonna add a miter gauge to this. Really simple, but it's gonna mean that we're gonna have to do a couple things. I put my melamine back on temporarily, and I've raised the blade as high as it can go. And I put my miter gauge up high enough that I know it's not going to actually hit the blade when I'm cutting. And then I just drew a line right up here. Since we will have to cut into the melamine to create that track, it means we need to create something that will keep it stable along here. And we're just gonna add some ribs on the top of this. The stock will be attached to the melamine, and it'll just sit flat on the extension here that we've made. I'm gonna add the braces on the back of this before I cut the channel in the front. And we need to know what our extension is. So I'll go ahead and rip my stock down to 3 inches. I've cut 6 pieces here that spans across the 24 inches. You don't have to line them up evenly, but I found that 4 13/16 gives you an even spacing all the way across, starting with the very front here, right on the line, right on the edge of your first board. But now I need to find the center of each one of these and then move the lines to the front so that I can drill them out. We'll go ahead and mark the line that we made for the miter gauge so that we don't cut into it. And we'll have this space up here that will attach those blocks. I'll come an inch down from the top as well as an inch up from that mark that we made. Now I can measure in on my cut, and I'm at about 4.5 inches. You'll want to make sure that you seal any exposed melamine with shellac. Shellac stiffens the fibers and keeps the moisture out, which helps prevent swelling over time. Shellac isn't great at wear though, so for the miter gauge channel, you may want to add some UHMW tape once everything's dry. That gives you a slick, durable wear surface right where it's needed. Thanks so much for watching. If you got some ideas out of this, hit the like button, consider subscribing, and please thank my patrons who help keep the website free and available to everyone. Seriously, the site is patron funded and it wouldn't exist without them. And remember to keep making things.